Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Annie Lau. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Chaos on the MTR's Island Line as doors vanish from a train during the evening rush hour. Hong Kong launches a health code for those who want to cross the border. And comments on Taiwan by former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe anger China. Services on a major section of the MTR's Island Line remain suspended after the doors of one carriage fell off as it passed through Causeway Bay Station. No one was hurt, but the bizarre incident caused chaos during the evening rush hour. Raymond Yang reports.
The rare accident was captured on mobile phone footage. A westbound train on the Island Line made an emergency stop at Causeway Bay Station after one pair of doors in the first carriage went missing. The ceiling also collapsed, dangling in the air, along with the route map. The MTR Corporation said no reports of injury were received. Technicians eventually recovered the missing doors under the second carriage, suggesting the train was in motion when the accident occurred. Sources said the train struck an unknown object in the tunnel, causing the doors to detach. The incident occurred at around 6 p.m., the worst possible time, just as the evening rush kicked in. The Island Line between Wan Chai and Quarry Bay was paralyzed, and commuters had to scramble for alternative modes of public transport. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
The SAR government has launched its own version of the health code, which the authorities hope will help speed up the reopening of the frontier with the mainland and Macau. But those who do not want to cross the border do not have to use it. Winner Wong reports.
In a bid to convince Beijing that Hong Kong is ready for quarantine-free border crossings again, the SAR government is launching its own version of the mainland-style health code. Applications open next Friday. Like the mainland's, Hong Kong's health code has 3 colors: red, yellow, and green. A person with a red health code has either tested positive or preliminary positive for COVID, is considered a close contact or a family member of a close contact, has recovered from COVID and in the first 2 weeks of leaving the hospital, or is under quarantine. People who live at or have visited a high-risk place within the past 21 days will show a yellow health code. Travelers who have finished quarantine or are exempted from quarantine but have not been in Hong Kong for a full 21 days yet will also have yellow. For everyone else, it's green, the expected ticket for quarantine-free travel. Privacy and information sharing has been one of the biggest concerns regarding the health code. The government said those who have no interest in traveling to the mainland or Macau will not be expected to download the Hong Kong health code.
The visit records will not be transferred automatically to the mainland or Macau authorities. Only on the, when he or she is an infected person or he or she has a high risk of infection, for example, is identified as a close contact, then the mainland authorities can ask for the visit records of that particular person.
Once a person applies for the local health code, their records from their Leave Home Safe apps will be synchronized. This means the health code app will have access to a person's travel information within the city in the previous 31 days. There will also be a function for users to upload their travel document information and align it with the Guangdong and Macau health codes. But authorities were unable to give a concrete timeline on when borders will officially open. Winner Wong, HKIBC.
The government's COVID indemnity fund has paid out more than $10 million to 87 people who suffered side effects after being vaccinated. And in a bid to increase the vaccination rate, children as young as 12 can now receive Sinovac shots. A long queue formed outside the community vaccination center in Kwun Chung Sports Center this morning as youngsters waited to get a jab. Among them was 17-year-old William, who asked his school for a day off. I waited for 3 to 4 months, he said. I'm happy that I can finally get vaccinated. The teenager said he opted for Sinovac because he feels it's safer than BioNTech. From today, people between 12 and 17 can get Sinovac shots after their parents signed a consent form. They can book online or visit a vaccination center to see if there are any slots available. Meanwhile, as of last Tuesday, 575 people who had an adverse reaction to COVID jabs applied for compensation from a government indemnity fund. 87 applications were approved and they received $10.4 million in total, or about $120,000 each on average. The adverse reactions included allergies and Bell's palsy, which results in the temporary paralysis of facial muscles. 20 applications involved deaths, but none got the nod. Under the fund, those under 40 can receive up to $3 million if they suffer serious side effects after vaccination, while people aged 40 or above can get up to $2.5 million. Researchers from 2 local universities have found that people can boost their antibody response to COVID vaccinations by supplementing a bacteria in their guts.
For this bacteria to at least stay inside your gut to colonize, you need at least maybe 3 to 6 months, at least 6 months for it to stay in there to actually boost your immunity. Out of 10 people, about 8 or 9 actually already has low bacteria. So it might be better to just actually boost the increase in this bacteria through lifestyle and probiotic supplementation.
The research team from the Chinese University and Hong Kong University collected blood and stool samples from 138 vaccinated people between April and August. Over half of them who received Sinovac jabs didn't have sufficient antibodies. MPF savings totaling $2.6 billion were withdrawn in the third quarter of this year. That's up 53% from the same period last year. The 9,300 withdrawals were made on the grounds of permanent departure from Hong Kong. A total $50 billion evaporated from the accounts managed by the Mandatory Provident Fund Authority in the 3 months ending September. But its $1.17 trillion worth of assets was still up 14% year on year. Beijing has reacted furiously after former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe warned China against taking over Taiwan. Abe had said China would be committing economic suicide by launching an attack. Sarah Wong reports.
No foreign policy issues rattle Beijing more than external support for Taiwan independence and animosity from Japan. So Beijing was outraged when the former Japanese prime minister gave his views. Speaking to a Taiwanese think tank via video, Shinzo Abe said a mainland takeover of Taiwan would be a Japanese emergency. The scenario he signaled could warrant a response from Japan and its ally, the United States. The hawkish longtime Japanese leader warned President Xi Jinping not to invade the island, saying it would be economic suicide. Assistant Foreign Minister Hua Chunying was quick to summon Japanese Ambassador Shuyi Hideo to protest against Abe's remarks. Hua accused Abe of brazenly interfering in China's internal affairs and backing forces advocating Taiwan's independence. Japan committed unspeakable crimes against the Chinese people by invading our country, Hua lamented, and thus has no rights to comment on Taiwan's fate. The Japanese envoy said he valued Beijing's response and would pass it on to Tokyo. Japan's current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is seen as a pacifist, having expressed remorse for Tokyo's wartime aggression against other countries. But he has taken steps to bolster Japan's defense, as parliament is dominated by hardline lawmakers aligned with Abe's vision to counter China. Sarah Wong, HKIBC.
The United Nations says up to 14 million people in Afghanistan have only one choice this winter: starve or flee.
Sell their furniture, sell their animals. Most of them sell their houses for food, but now they don't have anything to buy food.
the people of Afghanistan, the innocent people of Afghanistan, the children of Afghanistan who've had their lives upended through no fault of their own, cannot be condemned to hunger and starvation just because of the lottery of geopolitics and the lottery of birth.
Some relief agencies and many Afghans blame the West for the predicament. US-led troops invaded the country 20 years ago to oust the hardline Taliban, but the West withdrew abruptly in August as the Taliban swept back into power. Since then, aid to the country has dried up, leaving Afghanistan in crisis ahead of a harsh winter. And coming up after the break. A teenager who shot dead 4 students in school in the United States is charged with murder and terrorism.